What's up, everybody? It's Brock with another episode from the House of the Strong. On today's episode, we're going to talk about world records and how do we set them in the world of strongman. Stay tuned to find out. How's it going, everybody? Today we're going to bring up a little bit more controversy. Last year we had the Feats of Strength hosted by World's Ultimate Strongman going around and showcasing feats of strength from throughout the world, like it says in the name. So they went around and they had a bunch of different competitions, anywhere from the deadlift for reps, a max deadlift. We had a dumbbell for reps. We had a log lift for reps. We had a max stone as well. And we basically went throughout the world and had a bunch of different strongman athletes complete these lifts in their home gym. Now, that was due to because of coronavirus, right? No one could go compete. A lot of the competitions got canceled or postponed. And so people weren't able to do what they normally would do during the strongman season. So is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? I think it's a great thing for the athletes because it gives them some exposure, gives them some opportunity to do essentially their job, right? To perform as an athlete. But on the flip side of that, should we be setting world records in our own gyms? So like I've talked about in a previous video, strongman doesn't have a federation. There is no governing body that decides what is a world record, how do we set world records. They don't decide, what is required to be a strongman event. They don't decide anything because there isn't one. So what does that mean for the sport of strongman in terms of world records? Last year, the big controversy was Thor Bjornsson breaking Eddie Hall's 500 kilo deadlift. Now, Eddie Hall did his deadlift in 2016 at a Giants Live event, and he did it in a deadlift only competition. Now, not only did Eddie do it in a competition, he broke the world record by 37 kilos, which is unimaginable at the time. Now we have Thor Bjornsson, who, as we all know, has some bad blood, to put it, with Eddie Hall. And so he's been talking about he's going to break that 500 kilo deadlift for multiple years. And last year he did break that the 500 kilo deadlift. No one is questioning whether or not Thor has the ability to, or had the ability to break that deadlift. Thor is extremely strong. And had he not retired from the sport, I think he would be one of the guys to look out to break, the most world's strongest man titles, to be honest. But he has since retired. He's going to box Eddie in September. And that is in the past now. So, when we talk about world records, what is normally required for a world record? When we talk about a world record, usually there's some sort of parameters that you have to meet in order to set said world record. Whether it be equipment, whether it be a location or a competition, there's always some sort of metric that you have to meet in order to be able to be qualified to set a world record. As of right now, for strongman, there isn't that standard, there isn't that metric to measure that by. There is no, it has to be, this type of bar, or the referee has to be qualified, right? There's no clear-cut rules on, okay, there's no standard book that says this is a good deadlift, this is a good overhead press, this is a good squat. It can all really come down to the event and the event organizers to decide those parameters. A lot of times, for example, the squat, you would have to break 90 degrees or break parallel or the hip crease. A lot of these rule books on powerlifting state that. Not so much in strongman. Of course, a lot of times a squat, there's two safeties on either side and you have to touch those and then come back up. And each one of those are adjustable, so depending on the height of the athlete, they can adjust those. And that's not the same across the board. It's different almost at every competition. Now, a lot of the competitions do use the same, but it's going to be potentially different everywhere. There's no set standard. If you look at the IPF or the IWF, Powerlifting Association, there are guidelines for how you have to set this world record. Chiefly being that you have to be at a world or an international competition in order to break said world record. And that goes across any sport that there is, except for strongman. You look at the Olympics. You have an Olympic record and you have a world record. Now, you can break the Olympic record at the Olympics and not break the world record because the Olympics is only every 4 years. And in order to break that Olympic record, you have to do it at the Olympics, okay? So, therefore, you can break the world record at the Olympics because this is a international event, but you cannot break an Olympic record, even if you break the world record outside of the Olympics. Another big point to bring up too is that when we usually talk about a world record, it's done in some sort of competition. It's not just myself against myself. It's going to be me against some other competitors. And that factor can weigh a lot in how the competition goes. So for example, for the deadlift, you're going to have a starting weight at which someone is going to start with. This isn't powerlifting where you get 3 attempts and you call your own weights. This is going to be where you're going to start, let's say, at 800 pounds, and then you have increments. It might be like 8, 850, 9, 950, 1,000. Usually the jumps aren't going to be that big, but for example's sake, right? And whoever lifts the 800, they'll move on to the 850. Whoever makes the 850 moves on to the 900. Now, you may not have some athletes complete those lifts. So what does that mean? You get less rest time or downtime in between each lift. So there is a finite amount of time whenever you are in a competition to be able to perform the next lift. Whereas if we're doing this in a gym setting, I can wait as long as I want to. Or if I'm doing it for a recording, I can go ahead and warm all the way up, and then I'm only going to record the max attempt. And leading up to that, I take as much time as I want. And we saw this in the feats of strength. There really weren't any rules governing, how long they had in between, each lift. And, that's something that you have to take into account whenever you're actually in a competition. And doing this inside your home gym just doesn't take that into account. At most competitions, you're going to have more than one event. And if you have to do more than one event, deadlift may not come first. It could be the second day. It could be later on. It could be the third event for that day. And so that's going to have an effect on your deadlift ability, because if you're having to do other events, your body is already taxed, and that has an effect on you later on. And so to just sit there and do it inside a home gym, you don't have to worry about those other things. You can specifically be prepared for this one lift and this one lift only. So Brock, you're bringing up all these questions. You're bringing up the validity of a world record. How do we move forward from this? Well, I think first and foremost, I think we do need a federation. And there's another video that talks about, should we have a World Strongman Federation? But if we are going to, move forward with how do we define a world record and how do we set a world record, I definitely think that, the referees that we're using, that's going to be important, okay? Making sure we're using referees that are from the Arnold Strongman Classic, or they are from World's Strongest Man, or they're from World's Ultimate Strongman, Giants Live. Those are the referees that have been doing this for a while and are, I guess, quote unquote, qualified to do these said events and to be a referee. So when we talk about weights and implements, there should be guidelines. It should be like, this is the minimum length that this implement has to be. This is the maximum length it can be, the diameter or the weights that it can be, right? So that way each contest is allowed to have their own individuality, right? And be able to add their own flair onto the competition. That's what World's Ultimate Strongman does. All their implements are just different looking usually, and I love that, and I love seeing that, and I want to continue to see that. But if we're going to do, let's say, a max deadlift event, okay, then obviously the bar has to be so far off the ground, okay, and then the weights should be, obviously calibrated, and the bar can only be so long, because you do have the elephant bar, and lifting an elephant bar vice a standard bar are completely two different lifts. Same thing with the Hummer Tire deadlift, okay? The Hummer Tire deadlift, it's higher and the bar is different. The way the tires come off the ground are different. So, are we going to have a few different deadlift, for example, deadlift? Are we going to have a few different deadlift world records? Probably. We're going to have the Hummer Tire deadlift. We're going to have the Silver Dollar deadlift. You're going to have just the regular conventional deadlift. You're going to have the Hummer Tire deadlift. Now, for example, say the log, you could have one log record, right? Because we could stipulate, okay, it doesn't have to be wooden, it doesn't have to be metal, it just needs to be, let's say it has to be 12 inches in diameter and it has to be at least 6 feet long. And then that's the minimum, anything over that, then it's fine. But it has to meet those minimum requirements. And then, and then that's your new world record. You don't have to be so precise like we do in the powerlifting world, but the implements need to be at least a minimum/maximum size for it to be considered a world record. Lastly, the most important thing, I believe, is that it has to be set in a competition. Okay, now whether it be a World Log Championship, whether it be a deadlift only, an overhead press only, an Atlas Stone run, whatever the case may be, but it has to be done in competition. There's just so much that goes into being a competitor at a competition vice doing it on your own. And that's something you cannot replicate inside a home gym. It's just, you simply can't do it. And I think that is the biggest reason. You look at any other sport and it has to be within, you have to do it at a world or an international event. You have to meet certain guidelines, and I think we should set the basis of those guidelines. Now, I don't think we should be as constricting as other organizations like the IPF or the Olympics or anything like that. And I don't want to see, you have a world's strongest man deadlift world record, and you have the world's ultimate strongman deadlift, and you have the Arnold Strongman Classic deadlift. I don't want to see that, right? But I do want to see, if we're going to talk about a deadlift, then it was done inside a competition. And if it's a deadlift only competition, then that's what it is. But you still are within a competition. You start talking about IPF, they have, they have a bench only world record. They have the 3 implement world record. So you have to do the squat, the deadlift, and the bench press. And those are all, you have a push-pull world record, and you have all these different types of world records, but it's really for the same thing. And I don't think we need to go that route as far as strongman goes, but I definitely think there needs to be some sort of standard so that way we can set that going forward, and so that we don't have these controversies like we have right now between Hathor Bjornsson and Eddie Hall. I think world records are great for the sport, okay? It brings in people, it brings in money, and I love watching a world record being broken. There's no better thing to watch, whether it be the Olympics, whether it be powerlifting, whether it be a sport, it doesn't matter. But in strongman specifically, I love it even more because it's the sport that I love. And I think that we need to set some sort of standard in order to have a baseline of what a world record should be. Hey, thanks for watching the video. If you liked the video, go ahead and hit that like button down below. Go ahead and subscribe for more strongman news and strongman information coming out. I hope you guys are having a good day. Go out there and be great, and we'll check you guys later.